Thank you, thank you. Now the question of who and what served as the philosophical influences to Satoshi Nakamoto are often debated. So starting with Karl Marx, boo, boo. I'm going to go through a few of those. By some estimates, 150 million people died over the last century at the hands of Marxist regimes. This does not stop Karl Marx from being a fan favorite among college professors in the West. Some students report being assigned the Communist Manifesto as reading by fawning college professors as many as 5 to 8 times over the course of 4 years of liberal arts studies. It's hard to graduate from an American college with any degree in any field without reading the Communist Manifesto at least once in an elective. In his 1848 Communist Manifesto, Marx calls for central banking as a step in his 10-point plank. Marx writes, "Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and exclusive monopoly. Satoshi Nakamoto notably did not create a new currency for a central bank. These central bank currencies are monopoly currencies. Satoshi created a permissionless system, the very opposite. At its core, it is a competing currency that uses technology to interject competition into the currency regime, whether or not that competition is what government desires. Much like the cypherpunks use PGP and similar technologies to interject privacy into their communications practices, whether or not government desires." Once again, so we have Marx and Satoshi. There is little need to spend more time on two people so diametrically opposed. John Maynard Keynes, boo! Being such a favorite economist in our era of quantitative easing, boo! The most studied economist among economists in the academy, some wonder if Satoshi Nakamoto was inspired by Keynes. Keynes is a favorite of deceitful politicians. His ideas have been misconstrued to let them get away with anything they want. It's not his fault that they are so misconstrued, but it is his fault that the ideas so easily lend themselves to being abused. In 1923, in a tract on monetary reform, Keynes writes, "But this long run is a misleading guide to current affairs. In the long run, we are all dead. Economists set themselves too easy, too useless a task, if in tempestuous seasons they can only tell us that when the storm is long past, the ocean is flat again." Satoshi Nakamoto, in contrast, planned out a monetary policy for Bitcoin that goes on for 130 years and is built to be unchangeable, though anyone has the ability to create a fork of their own with this same technology. In contrast, a constant of Keynesianism is a flexible monetary policy. Our Keynesian central bankers meet with regularity to change the monetary policy in closed committee, some monthly, some quarterly, with constant research and a check-in taking place in the interim. There's monopoly authority given to these bankers and a little transparency. Little transparency. We have Keynes, we have Satoshi. There's little need to spend more time on two people so diametrically opposed. Next is Milton Friedman. An advocate of free markets. Now, Milton Friedman says beautiful things about freeing humanity, truly beautiful things, but he only took it so far. One critic of his has referred to him as the establishment's court libertarian, which is not an unfair statement considering Friedman's consistent attempts to make government more efficient rather than smaller. Examples include Friedman's support of government trust busting rather than free markets. Friedman's work on externalities, in which he turns the government as a solution to more effectively tax people when they derive benefit. Friedman's support for baseline welfare for all. Or Friedman's money supply work, in which he, to oversimplify, concludes the Great Depression was caused by inflating too little. Friedman's work in which he made government's power of taxation more effective. Now this is a little discussed point about Friedman. He was actually the inventor of the withholding tax in a Treasury Department role that he held from 1941 to 1943. Now Friedman also was in tremendous support of what is today known as quantitative easing. lending a considerable amount of his academic weight to this topic. He called merely for more transparent and predictable inflation. Now, this comment on inflation, transparent and predictable, sounds a lot like Satoshi Nakamoto on the surface. But when one analyzes Bitcoin's monetary policy, it is evident that the two, Satoshi and Friedman, could not be more different. It is true that Satoshi created a coin with a very transparent inflationary policy, but that policy is heavily front-loaded. 85% of Bitcoin that will ever be created have been created already. They were minted in the first 10 years of Bitcoin's existence. Rather than Friedman's stable, consistent inflation, we have benefits to early miners to increase network effects, followed by near minuscule inflation. It is certainly not the stable 3 to 4% Friedman imagined. Furthermore, the capped monetary policy of 21 million Bitcoin is counter to Friedman, counter to the Chicago School, counter to the monetarists. This does not make Friedman unworthy of admiration for his good points, however. He's incredibly quotable. In his era of sound bites and in our era of Twitter, there is seemingly endless supply of pro-free market Friedman quotes, such as underlying most arguments against the free market is a lack of belief in freedom itself. Or a useful rebuttal to those who would hide the truth of inflation. Inflation is the one form of taxation that can be imposed without legislation. Or, I think the government solution to a problem is usually as bad as the problem and very often makes the problem worse. All wonderful quotes from Friedman. All this comes, though, despite his consistent favoritism for government solutions and distrust of the free market. And perhaps a court libertarian is needed in some eras to advocate incrementally in the halls of power. But for those who want to be intellectually honest and intellectually rigorous, Milton Friedman is no free market economist. Friedman did a great deal of work favoring more efficient government oppression rather than favoring less government oppression. This is an important distinction. Many people who say they are into blockchain but not Bitcoin feel the same way. They want to make the current regime more efficient. Some misunderstand the white paper. Satoshi's white paper, if effective, will lead the world decades from now, entirely unrecognizable to the world today. Others who are into blockchain but not into Bitcoin understand the white paper perfectly. Change scares them. Radical change even more so. The writers of the Declaration of Independence, namely Thomas Jefferson, saw government as the greatest enemy to human freedom. Friedman did not live that perspective. Satoshi appears to recognize that one of the greatest evils of our current monetary regime is its governmental control. One day, Satoshi's white paper will be looked back on as a historically significant document for freedom in the course of world history, much as the Declaration of Independence. Friedman may have been who the creators of PayPal or Libra were reading, but it was not who Satoshi Nakamoto was reading. Friedman and Satoshi, there is little need to spend more time on two people so diametrically opposed. Radical, from the Latin for root, akin to the Greek, refers to going to the root of the problem. Economist Ludwig von Mises is a prolific free market economist who dug deeply at the root and refused to silence himself to fit into court. Mises pointed out in 1947, credit expansion can bring about a temporary boom, but such a fictitious prosperity must end in a general depression of trade, a slump. Satoshi, in response, creates a fixed monetary supply. And about free markets in 1940, Mises knew that they did not most importantly benefit the rich, but that they benefited the masses. The free development of the market economy is to be recommended, not in the interest of the rich, but in the interest of the masses of the people. It is not coincidental that 5 employees of the first 100, at least 5 employees of the first 100 at Kraken, a Bitcoin exchange, considered his seminal book, Human Action, to be among their favorites. Mises's work on socialism, bureaucracy, on human behavior, and especially in money, ring true in Satoshi's white paper, but not in the form that Mises wrote them, in a form distilled by one of his students, Murray Rothbard, one of the most ardently free market economists. Rothbard sought to inspire thought and action. During a 1972 debate at Claremont College, Rothbard commented to an uninspiring fellow economist, "Harold, the young kids out there are not going to be willing to go to the barricades in defense of lower transaction costs." Rothbard was right. Lower transaction costs are not inspiring, but the structure around Bitcoin is inspiring, the technology around Bitcoin is inspiring because of its consequences. Bitcoin has no KYC, know your customer policy, as banks and most American impacted financial institutions do. Instead, it is pseudonymous. Bitcoin has no AML, no anti-money laundering. Instead, it ushers in a renewed era of financial freedom, a concept once so central to human life. Bitcoin has no permissions to be part of the system. It doesn't ask what college you went to, or where you work, or what your last name is, or what tribe you're a part of, or what ethnicity you're a part of, or how much you earn, or what neighborhood you live in, or what country you live in. Bitcoin takes this permissionlessness a step further. It even has endless ability to fork. The ability to fork is a free market invitation to improve upon the product if one can. There is no copyright, there's no digital rights management. With his white paper and his code, Satoshi is welcoming individuals around the world to use their property, their hard drives, their GPUs as they see fit. This is in stark contrast to the false property rights claim that many refer to as intellectual property, very Orwellianly, in which people turn to government to limit the property rights of others, asking government to limit how others use their paper, their ink, their hard drives. Intellectual property is an attack on private property. These signals all point to someone reading Rothbard or acquainting himself with similar ideas to Rothbard or his wing of the Austrian School of Economics. In 2007 and 2008, as Satoshi Nakamoto was designing Bitcoin, there was an Austrian School Economic Monetary Policy wonk running for president, and interest in monetary theory was surging on the fringes of American politics, eventually entering the mainstream. As a likely cypherpunk and someone on the internet at the time, Satoshi would have noticed this taking place. The 2008 election, after all, got a lot of attention. Aside from creating his own currency with a fixed monetary supply, Satoshi, by his very birthday, April 5th, 1975, underscores that he was taking note of monetary policy debates on the topic of gold. April 5th is a day in 1933, President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102 to seize gold from American citizens. In contrast to other economists mentioned, the Austrian school's sound monetary position points to the Great Depression, in another of many examples of government wantonly overprinting money and then over-regulating as economies attempted to repair themselves. Correspondingly, Rothbard was staunchly pro-gold, repeatedly making a case for gold-backed currency. Satoshi comprehends the monetary importance of gold and a gold standard in limiting the power of government and replicates it in Bitcoin. With a 21 million cap on Bitcoin and a supply that lightly inflates after its first decade, to the point of arguably being deflationary in its fixed supply, though Bitcoin lacks some of the characteristics of gold, Satoshi creates a gold 2.0 by some regards. It is money that cannot be seized by government. No one may inflate the monetary supply of Bitcoin. No government reliably can take control of it. Satoshi checks many of Rothbard's boxes with the creation of Bitcoin. The timing of its creation adds to the fact that Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin with Austrian school economics as the basis of the technology. That national presidential candidate running at the time, true to the Austrian tradition, identified how important competing currencies in the United States would be for changing the welfare-warfare state. And Satoshi Nakamoto delivered on that challenge with an affront to the welfare-warfare state. In the absence of America's current monetary policy, war would not be able to continue as it does. Welfare and redistribution to the poor and wealthy alike would not be able to continue merely because government threatens force. The welfare distribution to banks is alluded to as being on Satoshi's mind during the early mining process. 10 years later, we have the Wall Street Journal and US Senate talking about how to stop it. We have Edward Snowden and CEOs of major corporations talking about what a game changer this is. It isn't just a game changer. This is a revolutionary technology that will change every aspect of our political process, leaving no stone unturned. Bitcoin is an affront to the status quo. Bitcoin is a revolution. It is not complacent, murderous Marxism from the academy. It is not the mealy-mouthed, deceitful Keynesianism of the halls of power. It is not bootlicking Chicago school. Bitcoin is an Austrian school-inspired revolution. It is unapologetic in the ways that it seeks to impact American society and the world. Because of this technology, no one will recognize the world 20 years from now, and it will look still more unfamiliar 40 years from now. Deficit spending has changed, taxation by inflation has changed, financial privacy has changed. Every aspect of government control, coercion, redistribution, and force depends on our monetary regime. Satoshi's response is to say no more. Those establishment voices who understand the white paper are terrified because the common man finally has a tool that can put power back in the hands of the individual. Thank you.